Howdy folks, how's it going? Welcome to Little John's, and as you can see, there's something very unusual going on this afternoon. I'm going to have a bit of a chat. This video is not specifically going to be brewing focused. This is not a review, it's not a tasting video. I've got, as you can see, 6 commercial beers. Yeah, the type of beers that fall into that mega small category that we all love and hate. But I'm not, as I said, I'm not reviewing these beers. I'm not doing taste on these beers. I'm going to have a chat about these beers while I'm drinking them. But before I get into that, let me give a quick shout out to all Little John's Patreons. Guys, thank you for your support. I can happily say that no Patreon dollars were spent on these beers. It's all good. Links down below if you're interested in having a look at what Patreon's about. If you're a subscriber, thank you for subscribing. If you're not, hit the subscribe button down there in the bottom, and hit the like button down there in the corner if you're sitting here watching. These things all help out. But anyway, as I said, I'm going to drink these beers. I'm going to have a bit of a yarn. This is a video which it's middle of December at the moment. Just had a mini bloody fucking hurricane blow through. It's still a bit breezy, so you might hear the doors and things rattling a little bit. But right now you're watching this. It should be New Year's Eve if you're watching it on the day it's come out. If not, yeah, a couple of days after. But I thought wrap the year up with this video. It's just something a little bit different, and explain why when I get to the end down here. But anyway, what I really want to talk about is, I've had this video planned for a while. It's taken me a long time to actually get around to doing it. But talking about the beers we used to drink, the things we drank, yeah, before we became home brewers, before we started brewing our own beer, and we got on that journey and onto that slippery slope and all that stuff that we talk about, and we discovered, you know, beer with flavour and, you know, character and colour, and we moved away from this sort of stuff. Yeah, these are the sort of beers that now we, yeah, not everybody, but to some degree, look, we tend to, yeah, bag out a little bit for the guys that come along that are new to the brewing scene and want to brew this sort of thing. But anyway, I'm gonna drink through these. Now I'm only having a little, it's a midi glass. I'm not going to drink 6 schooners while I do this video. The 6 midi glasses is going to be enough. But I'm just going to tie in a little bit of the story of all these beers. And dare say that some of you at home are you're going to recognise yourselves and your own journey and things along the way as we go. But anyway, starting off with VB, the Green Bullet, the very best, as we used to call it back in the day. Now, I've discussed many times on videos that back in the day I wasn't a real big beer drinker. I used to drink beer at parties when it was thrown on kegs, yeah, and it was cheap. But generally bourbon was my preferred drink. Yeah, this is I'm talking when I was 18, early 20s and stuff. Yeah, when I was out drinking all the time. But the reality is VB was probably my first beer. The first beer that I sort of was my beer of choice, and it realistically stemmed from the first event of the VB was with a couple of mates in the old hometown, and I'm pretty sure I would have been 14 at the time. Some of the mates would have been 15. There was a few of us, and we all threw in, and conned some of the older guys to buy us some beers. I think we had 2 6-packs of VB. Would have been the old stubbies. And I think we sat in the dressing room of the local football ground and drank them. Yeah, which when you're 14 and 15 is that's a common sort of place you go to drink. At many a party in a public toilet or a dressing room back in the day. Some really good times. Don't you worry about that. Not the worst, not the most terrible place to have a drink. But VB was the drink that we drank, and I think a lot of Aussies, yeah, particularly if you're sort of my age, where you're 50, maybe even some of the guys into their like in their 40s, possibly still drunk on the VB. I know the son-in-law at the moment. He's 26, and he's VB crazy. Yeah. It's been the number one beer in the country for a long time. Yeah, it was a big seller. Still is a big seller, but not as big as it was. But still goes along. Still ticks along all right in the sales. So a lot of people started off realistically wanting to brew VB on their home brew journey. I've not had a VB for quite a while. Well, I have the occasional one with the son-in-law when I'm visiting him. He's got a beer, or not so much when he comes up here. He's got a habit of leaving his beer just sitting around. He doesn't actually put it in the fridge. I don't know how he does it, but he does. So I avoid drinking it if I can, but I'll drink it. This is the thing. It's not terrible. These are all in their own ways successful commercial beers for a reason, because they've got a flavour that people want to drink. They're easy drinking. Pardon me. They're gassy, but you don't have to think about it. Like I said, lots of guys when they started home brewing, that was the beer they wanted to make. You don't see so much of it on the forums, on the Facebook pages and stuff anymore. It's swung now more to like things like Great Northern, because I think Great Northern's the number one selling beer in the country now. Iron Jack and things like that. So it has turned away a little bit. Well, I said, it's not a great beer. It's not a terrible beer. It's, simple beer for the masses. Yeah. Where she be? This is where I went next on my beer journey. Melbourne Bitter. Like I said, didn't drink a lot of the beers. I didn't have a real great preference. So early on, the VB was if I was going to buy beer, VB was the beer I would buy. At the pub, I used to drink basically, well, I drank bourbon. Very rarely drank beer at the pub. If I was drinking beer, generally it was probably a Tooheys New or Tooheys Draught. Pretty sure it was still Tooheys Draught when I first started drinking. I think it was about 16 when I first started hitting the pub on a regular basis. And Tooheys Draught was still the beer. I think I was about probably 17, I think, when they changed over to Tooheys New. But anyway, Melbourne Bitter became my drink when I was about 18. I'd moved to Sydney with an old school buddy. And we were living in a little, a no-bedroom bed sit in Petersham, running amok, having a fucking great time, smoking, drinking. in the cross in the city every fucking weekend and just, going crazy about the place, racing around on his fucking motorbike and, just having a ball tearing time. But that was the time when discovered Melbourne Bitter and moved on and went, okay, that became my beer of choice. And in all honesty, I have not had a Melbourne Bitter for probably 20 years. It's been a long time. Oh, there's some memories. I always thought of Melbourne Bitter, or the MB, I always used to call it the more better than the very best. The very best, then the more better, or the more betterer. To me, it always just seemed to be just a ballsier version of the VB, just a bit stronger, a bit more flavour. And I think for that very reason it put a lot of people off. It was that little bit too flavourful for the average school drinker. Now, I will apologise for the fact that all these beers I selected are Carlton United, apart from the TED. That's just how it was. It was just, I grabbed a bunch of beers at the BWS the other day. Okay, they're both the same. They're both 4.6% alcohol. Now, I'm pretty sure back in the day, the VB was like 4.8, 4.9, and the Melbourne was about 5.1. Obviously, over time, they have reduced the alcohol level on those to get around the excise issues. And it's actually interesting, because I do still remember very vividly the fucking uproar. I know it's probably 6 or 7 years, 8 years ago now, when VB tried to drop the alcohol on the on the beer, avoiding some excise costs, and they bloody had a lot of drama with the drinkers who lost their shit. And I think at the time it was 4.9, they dropped it back to 4.5. So it's gone back to 4.6. So at some point along the way, they've managed to sneak it back down again. Sneaky bastards. But anyway, that's how it is. So yeah, Melbourne Bitter. That was it for the time. And realistically, at that point, I didn't have a lot of money to spend, or what we spent. A lot of it got spent on fucking pot. So beer was probably the more a readily available option when we're drinking at home. And I know it says not a fucking review video, but you know, 2 beers here that's getting a little bit fucking harsh on the old palate, mind you. Charging me pretty quick too, so that won't help. But yeah, certainly on the beer I'd be rushing out to buy these days. It has got more character than the VB, but it's a bit grungy. And to some degrees, possibly even pushing into that up towards that, you know, crown type of effect. That, you know, deeper, ballsier, dirtier sort of a flavour that comes with those higher end Carlton beers. Anyway, this fella, the old Carlton Draught. Now, I've got to say something here. I have never, ever, not one time in my life have I ever drunk a Carlton Draught. No, never. around this time, around this Melbourne Bitter, this was around the time the Carlton Draught started becoming sort of popular. Now, when I was probably early 20s, so talking 1990, early 1990s, Carlton Draught started becoming a bit more popular in the pubs and with drinkers. But also ties in with the time that Carlton had really started pushing out of Victoria into New South Wales. Now, that is something that needs to be remembered to some degree. I am in New South Wales, always have been. When I first started drinking, Carlton beers weren't overly readily available apart from the VB. Melbourne Bitter was hard to find, and mind you, probably it still is to some degree. I think I've seen it last year, or the year before, it was like 1.2%, something like that, of the total beer market. So it's not super readily available. But back around that time was when Carlton started becoming more readily available in New South Wales. I was starting to push into more places. Pubs, even when I first started drinking, pubs were still very brewery based. That's changed a lot since then. I mean, obviously with buyouts from massive companies and things, you know, where they own multiple breweries, that's changed that landscape a hell of a lot. Well, I still remember when I first started going to the pub, or even sort of hanging around the pubs, and being aware of the pubs. There was the pubs were brewery pubs. So I know the local pub, like where I grew up in Bulli, not grew up, but where I moved to after I went all to school and started working at 15, which is where my family comes from originally, where I was originally born. Stuff returned to the old hometown. But the local pub there was a Chewy's pub. The pub up the road in Woonona was a Tooth's pub. No, sorry. The pub in Woonona was a Reish's pub. And there was local nearby pubs that were Tooth's. Yeah, so you'd walk into the pub and you could only get that brewery's beers. Like the local Bulli pub, you could only get Chewy's new. Well, that's what I said, Chewy's draft. Or you could get Chewy's old. That was it. There was 2 taps at the pub. There was 2 banks of taps, but there was only 2 taps on either bank, on either side of the bar. That was it. When you went down the road to Woonona, whatever it was, K1.5 down the road to the next suburb, was a Reish's pub. And so they had Reish's draft, and well, at the time they would have had Pilsner, the old DA, well, would have been DA at the time. What is it, Silver Bullet, which is now a Pilsner, at the time would have still been the DA, the dinner ale, which was originally served in the ladies' bar at the back of the pub. It wasn't served in the main bar. It was, for a long time, was a ladies' beer. Which is a bit of beer history. If you're not old enough to remember the ladies' bar, you might notice from going into a lot of the older pubs, and they still have signs up that says lounge, or I think most of them now these days are taken down the ladies' side. But quite often there was the main bar, and there was the ladies' bar or a lounge bar. And the lounge bar was where the ladies went. The ladies didn't drink in the front bar. Only strumpets and whores drunk in the front bar. Respectable ladies drunk in the ladies' bar, and that's where you got dinner ale. Reish's over time realised that as the palate Australian beer was developing, and the palate was growing into, and there was an influx of beers coming from overseas, and Australians were starting to drink European Pilsners, that they realised that, shit, hang on, here's a marketing opportunity. So they relabelled the old DA into just Reese's Pilsner. And started selling it mainstream. At that point it had become acceptable to drink. It was no longer just the girls' beer. Yeah, so the late 80s the pubs started to change, and that's when it started getting more in. So in the 90s, Carlton started well, even in the late 80s, a lot of my mates, when I transitioned to this, there was probably a lot of the local homeboys, I remember, to transitioned onto Carlton Draught. And it had a lot of supporters when it first came out. It was quite popular. And I've got to say, it's probably sits somewhere between these two for malt wise, and probably a little bit smoother on the hops. But all around it's very much just falls into these categories. Really would have depended on its marketing as being something new. Yeah, beer drinkers as a whole are generally fairly willing to try something new. Give it a crack. It's an Aussie thing. Give it a try. Yeah. Some people stayed there. Most people went back to where they were fairly quickly. It didn't. I don't think it didn't. It never really gave it a big momentum, a big following. So I'm actually, I'm quite happily drinking it. I said again, not something I'm not coming out to buy it again. But it is nice to just for something different to give the world. Now, next two beers roll on from here. Dry. This became a big thing again. I don't know exactly when it was. But the dry style became the first real big, well, not the first big thing was when these sort of beers went from being ales to being lagers, and that was around that late 80s. At the same time when Tooheys Draft turned into Tooheys New, because that was basically what the new thing was. It went from being that draft ale to being the new version of Tooheys, which was brewed as a lager. It was the same beer, brewed as a lager. This is the same beer it always has been, barring those changes to get the fucking alcohol down. But they just changed the fucking process. They started making them as lagers, and fucked if I know why. I don't know why as a brewer you would introduce a more difficult process, a more time consuming process into your beer production, when assumedly you had decent, yeah, good beer sales. There would have been a reason for it. I don't know what it is. And I'm not going to fucking bother looking out for it. So, anyway, Carlton Dry. A lot of these fellas who drunk this progress to this Carlton Dry. Again, this is a beer I've probably I might have had one or two of over the years. Certainly not something I've ever really drunk. I've had people leave it here occasionally after parties. But again, that's something I try to avoid drinking. But I said this was the progression. Yeah, and this is for the same reason that we've got Iron Jack and Great Northern and that sort of thing now in the market. It's the same reason we had the dries. It was something new. It's the same with every bloody retail consumer good in the world. They're constantly changing, trying to entice drinkers and the fucking general public to try it because it's different, it's new. Yeah, so they come up with this dry method, which was essentially using enzymes, the same as we do now, to pull more of the sugars out of the beer. The a dry finish, and that was the original marketing, was the drier finish, because the whole point was that you could drink more of it because you didn't feel as full because of that dry finish. They were a lower starting gravity, lower finishing gravity. You didn't feel as full drinking them, was the whole idea. So Carlton Dry became a bit of a thing. Now, I will put an asterisk up on this. But I'm talking about the mates and the boys and whatnot. I'm referring to country lads. Yeah, I'm in Young, Central West New South Wales, Southwest Slopes. It's country. We probably got inundated, our local pubs got inundated with Carlton, certainly probably before a lot of the Sydney pubs did, because of our closer proximity to Melbourne. It's not much, but we were a closer hit. So a lot of the boys were drinking this as their first option with the dry. But the marketing point was originally as drier, so easier to drink, and it is. It's dry beers are essentially easier to drink. There is lighter body, they go down easier. You haven't, whether you don't feel as full or not, I don't really know. But the theory behind that whole lower alcohol, not lower alcohol, but lower sugars certainly works. Yeah. These pushed into a new market when they sort of didn't quite get the impact they wanted from the whole dry thing. And this one has it on here, lower carb. This is where the dry beer pushed into a new category reasonably quickly, and that was the low carb beer. Again, the very late 80s, early 90s was a time of, when people really started to push fitness and health and looking after yourself and all this sort of shit. More than any other time in human history. So low carb was a way of having your beer and not getting the fucking beer belly. I don't drink low carb beer, can you tell? Anyway, so they worked out reasonably quickly that, hang on, these light beers, dry beers, are lighter in calories, lower carb. We can push that as a marketing thing. So originally it was they started pushing that towards the ladies. It was like, ladies, drink these low carb beers. Things, they're still around here. Pure Blonde. The Carlton Drive. There was a whole bunch. There was a lot of blondes, and a lot of these Tuies and Carlton. Back in the day, like back in the early 90s, there was a lot of beers that aren't around now. were pushed more on that blonde, because they tied the blonde into the lighter calorie, lower carb thing, and pushed that. But that's it. So I do know a lot of people that went from this, or even this, to that, and a lot of that was simply because of the marketing. Marketing made it seem cool, and marketing played a big part in what a lot of people actually drink. There's got to be a reason why Great Northern is so popular. It's marketing, not because it's a fucking good beer, because it's marketing. It appeals to a romantic notion that, yeah, Great Northern, the beer from up here, yeah. This image is made in the tropics in this beautiful, pristine, lovely place. So it's going to be better for you. You're going to feel better for drinking it. And this is what they push on marketing. It's wankery bullshit. Yeah, I discuss it plenty, and I love it. I love the whole marketing concept and how it works with people, and how it fucks with people's head, and how, you know, sucks people in. I hate it in how it's used and what it does and the bullshit. You know, when someone, you know, is able to look through it and actually see it for what it is. But this is a prime example of marketing working to get fucking beer sales. That's a fairly, yeah, it's a fairly nothing beer. But again, like I said, you don't have to think about it. It's not hard to drink, which is why it wins over so many bloody, you know, average drinkers and, you know, the average Joe at the pub. Righto. Moving on from the two Carltons, as I said, weren't beers of mine, but were some people's beers. Chili's Extra Dry, TED. You often see, if you don't know, you see TED, big letters, TED, on a beer for them. This is what they're referring to. They're not referring to that fucking rude, cuddly character that played beside Mark Wahlberg in the movies. They're talking about this. Chili's Extra Dry. This was my beer of choice after moving on from this sort of thing. For a long time, this was, if I was going to buy a beer, I was going to the hard in the carton, and that was generally like, you know, beyond here, back in the single days, oh fucking hell. I apologise for all my gas. Moved on, got married, had kids, all that sort of stuff, and then started, yeah, I didn't really drink a lot for a few years there. First had kids and whatnot, reined it in a little bit and got serious. I did a little bit of home brewing around that time. That was when I first got into the home brew. When I was about, young bloke was a baby, he was maybe one. Yeah, so I was around 24 when I first started home brewing. My uncle was a home brewer. Used to brew in his backyard. If you've ever looked at Little John's website, there's actually, the story is on the website of how I got into the home brewing and what started me. And it was my uncle, and he used to home brew in his backyard. He made good home brew at the time, for what it was. But Used to spend a lot of time with him in summer. But this was the progression beer. Progression on the Chili's Extra Dry. So if I was away for the weekend, I was going to go halves in the cart with the bloody, the brother-in-law or the brother or whatnot, then Chili's Extra Dry was the beer. My brother, younger brother, drinks this, has drunk this forever and a day. He's 6 years younger than me. He's the oldest of my two brothers. Youngest brother, he's actually 18 years younger than me. And the young, the little bro, that's his drink. It always has been, until he was here a couple of weeks back, and I didn't realise at the time because he drank bloody home brew all day, but he arrived here with a beer, as he always does, beer in hand. He had his beer, but he left at the end of the day, and he'd left the bottle in the stubby holder, so I could only see that, so I just assumed it was a TED. It wasn't until I was bloody packing up at the end of the day that I realised he had a Great Northern in there. So I fucking don't know what that is. I haven't had a chance to bloody actually ask him about it, but I'm going to. I'm going to go down and spend the night with him just after Christmas. I've got a brew day and brewing and a drinking session booked here with Steve Arell, one of the Little John's Patreons, and I'm going to be down in my cabin. Steve lives in Ulladulla, which is, pardon me, just a bit further down the coast, and brother's got a caravan there. So I'm having a brew day with Steve, and I'm going to stay at the little brother's place that night, and he's got a caravan down there, so I'll go down there with him and we'll have a few beers, and I'm going to fucking quiz him about it and find out what the fuck was going on. Why was he drinking Great Northern? Because that's just blown my mind, because he's just been a crazy TED drinker. That was it. It was my beer of choice for a long time. And I don't know why. Now that's a very different beer from the rest of these. Dirty. Well, I will say, that's a beer that still reeks of fucking Pride of Ringwood, which isn't, for me, is not a bad thing. And it's probably why I possibly should have grabbed a Chili's as opposed to maybe one of these. I think Chili's still embrace the Pride of Ringwood. That would certainly indicate they still do. I would have assumed that they would have progressed over to Super Pride sometime in the last sort of bit. Especially when there's been stories around, Pride of Ringwood crops getting pulled out and cutting back because no one's using it. Now, by that token, I don't think any of these beers are using Pride of Ringwood, possibly Super Pride. It's the hop in here is cleaner than this. That's got that earthy, dirty, peppery note of Pride of Ringwood. Okay, but anyway, not a review video, not what I'm here for. So, there's actually quite a few pictures of me over the years enjoying one of these with different people at the times, sucking on a Chili's Extra Dry. And like I said, for a long time, and for more of my drinking life than any other beer, that was my beer of choice. If I was getting a beer with Chili's Extra Dry. It probably changed, so probably from that mid-20s, 24, 25-ish sort of thing. through until probably 10 years ago, around the 40ish, around the time I had my fucking first heart attack, which is when I got back into the home brewing, which is fucking crazy. It still fucking spins me out, blows my fucking wife's mind to know that. It's probably a story that doesn't get told too often, but it was, yeah, it was recovering from my first heart attack. I had a triple bypass. I'm a member of the Zipper Club. That was I was 40, so 2010, and while I was recovering from that, was about 4 months into my recovery, was actually my very first outing in the public, outside the house, like proper outing. We went garage sailing, and I'd been talking to the wife only a couple of days before, but I just had this really bizarre incoming that I needed to get back into the home brewing. I was very restricted in what I could do, and I felt like home brewing. And since then, like I said, I went out that day and there was a home brew kit at a garage sale. We've done a lot of garage sales back in around that time, and I've never ever again seen home brewed gear at a garage sale locally. It was just that one day, 3 days after I said to the missus I think I should get back into it. So $20 and I bought a fermenter, which I still got. It's still sitting over here in the corner. I haven't used it for quite a while. I think last time I used it I got an infection. I think it's fucking clagged out, but I've kept it. It's just sitting in the corner. It'll get thrown out soon, so I'm remodelling. But anyway, yeah, that's a fucking irrelevance. That's a side story, but yeah, got me back into the home brew. And around that time, I started drinking Corona. Well, probably just a little bit before that, I'd started drinking Corona. And again, I didn't drink much. I'd buy a 6-pack of Corona once every fucking 6 weeks. And I'd sit down, I might have a couple, 2 or 3 on a Saturday afternoon. Or we're having a barbecue, I'd have a couple of Coronas. Up until then I hadn't drunk. I still wasn't drinking beer. I had a fucking heart attack, fucking got me fucking chest ripped open, and they turned me heart off for a while, and they turned it back on, and suddenly I was a fucking home brewer who fucking liked drinking beer. After 25 years of being a hardcore bourbon drinker. I could work that one out. But anyway, so Tooheys Extra Dry was my beer for a long time. I struggle with it now. It's not great. The brother drinks it because he swears it's the only beer that doesn't give him a hangover. He reckons, and he doesn't mind it. He doesn't mind a drink. He does have a good drink, the brother. And he reckons Tooheys Extra Dry is the only beer he can drink and wake up the next day and go to work, no problem. So I don't know. Now these two had a drama with changing the alcohol content a while back, and fuck me, I think they've done it again. Now my eyes fucking don't work great, but the alcohol itself is fucking pretty small, but I can tell from the standard drinks. 4.4% alcohol. This was 4.9 when it first came out. It was 4.6 for a while. It's now down to 4.4. I'm pretty sure last time I would have had one of these would have been 4.6. So I'll be chatting up with the brother with that, because he fucking spat the dummy when it went down to 4.6 as it was. it didn't go back up like the VB did. So it's actually a bit lower. That's interesting. Where is this fella? It's 1.3 drinks, 4.5%, so it sits in between. So the ABVs have been pulling back fairly consistently across all the range. And as I said, the breweries want to they'll tout that they're looking after the health of their drinkers by reducing the alcohol, making it better for the drinker. So people aren't getting as drunk. They're not fucking their livers as much. So guys aren't going home and smacking their wives around because they're not as drunk. When the reality is, they're just reducing their fucking, they are reducing their excise costs, which means they're increasing their profits. Because dropping any of these by 0.1% of alcohol reduces their excess by somewhere in the range of 4 or 5 cents a bottle. Now, that's not much to you and me. But when you're brewing 1 million bottles, 4 cents a go, it's a lot of money. When that fucking comes over fucking years and years and years, it's big dollars. It adds up. These places make money by keeping their costs down. And that's a big, excise is a big cost to a brewery. So pulling alcohol down saves them a lot of money. Anyway, you having fun watching me drink beer? I've got to say, Little John's getting a little bit fucking... It's probably not a bad thing we're getting towards the fucking end. I said, probably not a bad thing I wasn't drinking scotch. We're dragging on. I've got a fucking timer over here just to keep an eye on it. But, you can only drink 6 beers so fast. At 50, odd years of age. Okay, so KB was a fairly popular beer, or was mainstream beer back in the same days as Chewy's Draft. And KB, in all honesty, was probably the New South Wales beer of Carlton United. I've got a funny feeling that back in the day it would have been a Tooths beer, not Carlton United. Carlton United probably picked up KB when they took Tooths back in the day, but that's something maybe someone want to look up. But what got me, and this is what led to this whole video, was months ago I pulled into the local liquor land just to go and suss out their beer stock and see if there's anything new and whatnot. And also check out the liquor land, because sometimes they have different bourbons than the other bottle shops in town. So sometimes you can pick up something a little bit different. Example, I was just down there today, and I know that I was talking to the girl down there because I picked up a 6-pack of this for Steve. As I said, we're going down to bloody having a brew day. I'm going to take a 6-pack down because he was saying he's been talking this with his neighbours, and because they've never drunk it, they've never heard of KB. So I've got a 6-pack I'm going to take down to him when I do that brew. So, I said you're watching this on New Year's Day, or New Year's Eve. I was at Steve's yesterday. But anyway, I pulled in the bottle out, and here's a sign at the front, KB. I thought, fuck. So I grabbed one, and I thought, okay. And I said, this is what led to this video. I've had this sitting here for a while in the fridge, waiting to do this video. KB. Now I've probably not drunk a KB since I was 16. I remember days playing social cricket as a young bloke with the local pub team. The Bullo pub team playing social cricket and having eskies full of Chili's Draught and KB. That were your option. That was your beer option at cricket at the time. Used to be called Kids Beer, KB, Kids Beer, MB. That's a Melbourne Bitter. That's a MB. Victoria Bitter, VB, the very best, the more best. Kids Beer, KB, Kids Beer. I don't know why exactly it was classed, what it was called, Kids Beer. It's 1.4%, standard drink, 4.9% alcohol. It's actually the only one of these beers that's still brewed at 4.9%. So it's still getting brewed at its full strength original version. That's where it would have been originally. It does say KB Lager on the can. I really doubt the KB was a lager when it was brewed, but it could have been. But I would imagine the KB would have meant something bitter. But it does have an overall smoother finish than these fellas, and it does have a bit more of that dirty, earthy feel. So I would tend to imagine they're probably actually using Pride or Ringwood as opposed to Super Pride in this fella because of its heritage. I don't know. It was an interesting conversation. I was at Liquorland this morning to pick up the 6-pack, and I was chatting to the lady down there at the counter. And she said they've actually, because I was asking, because they had a couple of 6-packs left in the fridge. And I really didn't think I was going to get them, so I sort of discussed with her about the fact I assumed it was quite old. Been hanging around for a while. She said no, it's actually reasonably fresh, because they've continued to brew it. Though this has a youth best before of February 2022, so it's not that fucking I don't think it's as fresh as she might have made it out to be, but she did say they'd sold a lot of it, and that Carlton was still releasing it, and they're probably at the moment they're looking at releasing it in the February or March of next year. Where normally they do that sort of one big run and that would be it. It's done. They've met their requirements on the trademark laws. But apparently they sold so much that they kept it going, and they'll keep it going until such time as the the want dies off, which it's going to, because it's not a great beer. Though I've got to say, it is much more in line with the current beer feel. It's much more in line with Great Northern. It's closer to Great Northern than it is to VB. It's got a lower bitterness. It's more smooth and rounder. So who knows? They just might. They may have just found themselves a little niche in the market, but the reality is it'll probably die. It'll die off and go by the wayside, as it always does, and then we'll just fade back in the background as one of those historical beers that we used to drink. It's the same reason you see things like Geelong Bitter and Sydney Ale and stuff like that. Brisbane Bitter, historical beers. You see them occasionally getting thrown out, and that's the reason why they do it. They're just protecting trademarks. So they just run these batches through every so often. But that was what led me to this, because this, I said, as much as the Victoria Bitter I said, was that first beer that I drank on a regular basis. You know, this was probably a beer I drank more than that back in the day. I drank beer before Victoria Bitter. I mean, I didn't drink a lot. I was young, but I certainly had experiences with KB as a young bloke, here and there. I wouldn't have been drinking large amounts of it, no doubt about that, but I certainly had memories of, you know, 11 and 12 years old at Christmas, or like I said, you know, tagging along with the uncles to cricket games and things like that. Family events where I would have, you know, had a couple of mouthfuls of swigs on a KB. There's quite possibly times when there was kegs of KB at family fucking gatherings. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up because it's just getting ridiculously long. If you're still here and watching, fucking good on you. If you're coming back and watching your sections, doing bit by bit, yeah, good on you as well. I hope you've enjoyed a little bit of a yarn bull from Little John and some stories. As I said, this was not ever intended to be a review or a tasting video of these beers. I will wrap up the whole video by saying, overall, these beers are not the kind, they're not beers I'm going out and buying to drink on a regular basis. I think I've been long enough into my beer journey now to accept and, you know, and admit that there's a reason why these sort of beers are popular, why they're bought, because they're inoffensive, they're easy to drink, you know. You don't have to think about what you're doing. Yeah, it's mega swill. It's mass produced for the masses, because this is what the masses want. Yeah. Luckily for a lot of us, we've progressed, and when we said nah, we want more. We want better. We want flavour. We want some character. It's why we brew, it's why we drink craft beer, all that sort of shit that goes along with it. But anyway, for right now, that's me, I'm done. So thank you for joining me. Again, thank you to all the patrons, Little Johns, your support is invaluable. Links down the bottom. Again, hit the subscribe button if you haven't. If you're hanging around and you're still watching and you haven't hit the subscribe button, I just don't know why you haven't. Hit the like button. Give me that thumbs up. This all helps keep Little John going. But anyway, that's me. Done. Guys, Happy New Year. Have a good one. The last 12 months have been very interesting with extravaganza and the introduction of the kegerator into Little John's, getting serious with the water additions and things like that. So it's been great to have you along with the journey. Look forward to seeing you in 2022 for more brewing adventures, more experiments, more bullshit, more banter, more of the stuff that Little John does. Anyway, guys, Happy New Year. Have a good one. Till I see you again, we're brewing beer, drinking beer, we're talking beer. Good brewing. Cheers, guys.